Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. At the banquet, in front of everyone, my husband hugged his first love and splashed red wine all over me. But I am not the same person anymore. I slapped that scheming woman backhandedly. Someone's got to pay for dirtying my dress, and it's going to be you. I've been reborn. At this moment, I'm holding a wine glass in front of me. A woman who looks a lot like me is pitifully nestled in my husband's arms. Jenny, get lost before I lose my temper. The man's expression is icy, and his eyes are filled with undisguised disgust. Seeing this, I chuckled bitterly to myself. I was a fallen heiress, my family in decline, and my parents long gone. Just when I was lost and helpless, Alan appeared. He forcefully and affectionately told me to marry him. He was the man I had secretly loved for 5 years, and I had nothing left. I was no longer the rich heiress, nor had the means to match his status, but he was willing to marry me. Besides love, I couldn't think of any other reason I married him joyfully. But married life turned into a living hell. He never touched me when he was sober, and he forbade me to wear vibrant red or elegant black, leaving me only with those plain white dresses. I gradually realized that he seemed to be looking at someone else through me. I twirled the wine glass absent-mindedly, glancing at the woman in my husband's arms. She looked a lot like me, except I loved bold and flamboyant red, loving everything that showcased my personality. But this woman, true to her name, dressed in white, was like a fragile, pitiful flower in the wind. Seeing me not respond, Alan's face darkened. He picked up a glass of red wine and threw it at me. Caught off guard, I couldn't dodge in time. The bright red liquid stained my pristine dress. I looked down at the noticeable stain on my dress and pursed my lips. Such a beautiful dress ruined. That upsets me. Jenny, this is my last warning. Leave now. As Alan kept nagging, I grew impatient and slapped Annie across the face. Jenny, you hit me. Annie covered her face in shock, clearly not expecting me to strike. You're crazy. Alan Ward shielded Annie in his arms and raised his hand to hit me. Do you intend to hit your wife in front of all these prominent guests? I sneered inwardly. Of course he wouldn't. This scumbag valued reputation more than any woman. Even his first love was no exception. Without looking at Alan, I withdrew my hand and rubbed my palm casually. But my dress is dirty. Someone must pay for it. I smiled and looked at Annie. Annie, you will be responsible. Alan's hand didn't fall, but his eyes were filled with undisguised loathing as he gritted his teeth. I'm telling you again, leave now. I had avenged the humiliation from the previous banquet and didn't want these two to dirty my eyes anymore. With a smile, I shook the wine glass in my hand and glanced at Annie, still holding her face in Alan's arms. I made sure my voice was loud enough for everyone around to hear. I have some matters to attend to, but this banquet is important. Annie, accompany me. My husband went to greet the guests. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw Annie's face change drastically. I arched my eyebrows, downed the wine in one go, and turned to leave. Alan, this slap isn't the end. We will settle the score slowly. Leaving the banquet, I touched my heart, beating fast with excitement, finally feeling the joy of rebirth. But in this life, I don't plan to divorce Alan. After all, in the last life, Annie juggled Alan and my childhood friend, showing great skill. So this time, I'll repay her in kind and let her taste betrayal too. The next day, I wore my favorite red dress and went alone to a university's art studio. Back then, I was still the most dazzling heiress, graceful and dancing, the center of attention. This time, though, I wasn't there to dance. I was there to wait for someone, Tony, my childhood friend. Years of friendship couldn't compare to a glance from Annie. In my previous life, he was thrilled for Annie, wielding the knife for her. Even until my death, I never knew it was him who handed her the blade. According to the timeline, he and Annie should be quite close by now. Eyes like his could fall for someone like Annie. What use could they serve? Sure enough, after finishing my dance, Tony was waiting outside. Feigning surprise, I looked at him holding a pair of black stilettos. After a moment, I asked with faint delight, Kiki, what are you doing here? Kiki was a name I gave him when we were young, playing and fighting. He was so mad about it that he didn't speak to me for months. As I expected, even after we drifted apart post-marriage, hearing this name still made him fume. He strode towards me quickly, towering over me, gritting his teeth. "Shut up, don't call me that." I laughed, tiptoeing to pat his head. He moved away impatiently. Instead, I got more excited. "Not letting me touch," I said. "I'll touch." Tipping higher, I intentionally slipped, falling backward in a panic-stricken pose. Careful, quick reflexes pulled me into his arms, his voice betraying some fear. "So clumsy, can't you behave? Always messing around." I pouted, saying nothing with a pitiful look. Maybe my act was too convincing. He cleared his throat, trying to make it up to me. "All right, stop sulking. I'll take you to eat," he added. "To boost your brain too." Then I eagerly put on my shoes, pulling him excitedly out the door. Walking along, he couldn't help but scoff. "Really dumb. How did Alan even like you?" I sneered internally. "How did you two idiots fall for a pretentious woman like her?" I said with a grin. "My husband is so good to me." He was worried I'd get tired at the party last night, so halfway through, he called Annie to take my place. Tony paused mid-step and asked with a strange look, "Annie?" I nodded and added excitedly, "Yeah, and let me tell you, she looks so much like me. My husband is so thoughtful." She even leaned into his arms, and the guests couldn't tell who his real wife was. Tony didn't say anything else and fell into deep thought, but I couldn't help but curl my lips into a smile. How does a backup feel? Then they finally realize they're just a backup. I curiously looked at him, but he suddenly turned his head away awkwardly. Yet, I didn't miss the fleeting self-mockery in his eyes. From the looks of it, he was starting to doubt his place in Annie's heart. Good. He was doubting the second step of my plan was working. After parting ways with Tony, I went straight home. As soon as I got home, an ashtray came flying at me at full speed, as if someone wanted to kill me. Thanks to my memories from a past life, I sidestepped just in time so the ashtray hit the wall, fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Accompanying the ashtray was Alan's furious roar. "Who told you to wear that?" As expected, only that precious first lover of his could make him this angry. I pretended not to understand, looking at him innocently. "Can't I wear this? I think wearing white all the time is boring. Wearing white every day makes you look like a ghost." His face twisted in anger as he shoved me to the ground. "Are you talking about Annie?" I lifted my eyes and curled my red lips. "Nope, lots of people wear white dresses. Why does it have to be her?" I sat on the ground, my long slender legs exposed, contrasting sharply with the bright red dress. His eyes turned icy as he strode over, gripping my chin tightly. "I told you to behave. You're always going to be my wife." He paused, and a cold gleam flickered in his eyes. "Do what you're supposed to. Annie is way out of your league." I wasn't angry. Smiling, I asked, "Then why didn't you marry her?" As expected, his face turned dark. The next second, he reached for my throat. "Say one more word." But I wasn't scared. I looked at him with a smile, even tilting my neck slightly. "Alan, poor you having to choose between your company and your true love." I admit I was trying to provoke him. I was betting on how much Alan cared about his company versus how much he cared about Annie. Then I saw a flash of murder in Alan's eyes, but he retracted his hand after all. As anticipated, everything was going according to plan. Selfish and greedy, those are this man's true nature. As long as I don't file for divorce, Alan won't dare break all ties with me. After all, Alan always presents himself as a family man. With a constant smile on my face, I stood up leisurely, patted away non-existent dust from my clothes and chuckled lightly. "Not going to hit me? Then I'm going upstairs to rest." Without even looking at him, I headed upstairs and went back to our room. All right, now it's confirmed. Even Annie, his so-called true love, pales in comparison to the company. Now I can fully commit to what I want to do, and 3 days later would be the perfect time. 3 days later, in my previous life, paparazzi took photos of Alan and Annie at the Obguan. For the sake of the company's reputation, I paid a hefty sum to suppress the news. But this time they need to taste the pain of being publicly shamed. On the third morning, I sent an anonymous email to a paparazzo. The content was simple. Just informing them that Alan and Annie would be at the OBGYN that night was a big scoop the paparazzi wouldn't be able to resist. And they didn't disappoint me. By midnight, a hot search had exploded. The headline was, President of H Group's late-night visit to OBGYN with a woman. Alan always masked himself as an upright man who valued family. This time, his facade was shattered completely. I was sitting on the couch in the master bedroom by the window, browsing the hot search when the door was violently flung open, followed by Alan's furious voice. Did you do this? I put down my tablet and looked at him mockingly. Alan, you really think too highly of me. You had me locked up for 3 days without a penny for our anniversary. What could I have done? Hearing my explanation, Alan's expression softened a bit but still held suspicion. It really wasn't you. I chuckled. Despite my disdain for your actions, we're still in the same boat for now. Hurting you wouldn't benefit me at all, would it? You'd better think about how to fix this mess. Watching Alan's panicked expression, I couldn't help but laugh. Seeing him this anxious was truly rare. As he was questioning me, a pitiful voice reached our ears. I watched as his face immediately softened, turning towards Annie, who stood at the door. Annie clung to Alan, her face pale and tear-streaked. Alan, I'm sorry. This is all my fault. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't be caught in this scandal. Alan clenched his teeth. Annie, you're pregnant. Don't get worked up. This isn't your fault. If I find out who did this, I won't let them off. Watching this sappy scene unfold before me, I curled my lips into a silent smile. Right, Annie was pregnant and shouldn't get worked up, but I wondered if the real father of her child would appreciate Alan being such a doting dad. And it was at this moment that Annie finally seemed to notice me, looking all aggrieved. Ginny, I know you hate me because Alan likes me, but we're truly in love. How could you throw such dirt on me? Calling me a mistress is one thing, but now that I'm carrying Alan's child, have you thought about his reputation? I couldn't help but laugh at this pillow talk. From my angle, Alan couldn't see it, but I could clearly see a glint of smugness in Annie's eyes. Such a pure and considerate first love, sending a child like a gift. I wonder what Alan's reaction will be when he learns the truth one day. I can't wait for that day. Meeting Annie's challenging gaze, I smiled, implying, Miss Annie, you should believe in my husband's capabilities. Protect your child well, or the real father will be heartbroken. I deliberately emphasized the words real father, and sure enough, the moment I finished speaking, I saw Annie's face change slightly, a flash of malice in her eyes. Can't keep up the innocent act anymore? That makes me look forward to the upcoming drama even more. Having completed my performance, I planned to go upstairs to my room, but unexpectedly, Alan remembered Annie's earlier pillow talk. His face darkened. He coldly said to me, Stop. Did you really do this? I sneered. How could I have ever been so blind to fall for such an idiot? Too lazy to engage with him, I intended to go straight upstairs. But as I passed by Annie, I was suddenly grabbed forcefully by the wrist, and Alan's furious voice sounded behind me. I'm asking you a question. At that moment, I glimpsed a flash of light outside the window from the corner of my eye. I smiled. The timing was perfect. I then turned around, harshly flinging Alan's hand away, and firmly questioned, Alan, get it straight. I'm not your plaything. You think I'm obliged to answer you just because you're asking? Who do you think you are? Alan probably didn't expect me to be so assertive. After a moment of surprise, his eyes turned fierce. What nonsense are you talking about? I sneered inwardly but didn't show it on my face. Of course, I wasn't talking nonsense. I was solidifying Annie's status as a mistress. I continued righteously. You have the nerve to say I'm talking nonsense? I haven't even questioned you about bringing this woman home. If you want to marry her, then you can divorce me right now. I won't stop you. My family may be down and out, but that doesn't mean you can bully me as you please. Turning the tone, I directly addressed Annie. And you, Miss Annie, first of all, we're not acquainted. Secondly, this is my home. You came uninvited, without my consent, and then blamed the rumors on me calling you a mistress. That's hypocritical. Lastly, my husband hasn't made a definitive judgment yet, and you insist I did this? Do you have any evidence? If not, you're being malicious. Clearly, my sudden outburst caught them both off guard, and Annie's face became increasingly unsightly as her eyes filled with hatred. Looking at her expression, I smiled. Good, she's losing her cool. Just as Alan angrily shouted and moved to hit me, I sarcastically said, Think carefully, Alan. Do you want this to become the headline news about H Corporation's president beating his lawful wife over a mistress? As if to confirm my words, Alan received a phone call right then. After hanging up, he looked even grimmer, glaring at me as if he wanted to eat me alive. Were those reporters summoned by you? I shrugged. Alan, I haven't left the house for 3 days. Besides being called Mrs. Allen, who do you think I can command? Hearing this, Alan looked at me, his expression shifting, but he said no more. The top priority now was to deal with the reporters outside. They wouldn't be easily fooled. Seeing he was speechless, I stepped forward, grabbed his arm and said sarcastically, "So, dear husband, let's see your best acting skills." Ignoring Annie, who stood aside, I dragged Alan and walked out of the villa, clinging to Alan's arm. I faced the reporters with a smile. "Sorry for the trouble, but the online news is all fake." Turning to Alan, I sweetly asked, "Right? You haven't done anything to betray me, have you?" Alan remained silent for a while, probably thinking about how to strangle me to make his anger. But I didn't care as long as things unfolded according to my plan. Sure enough, after a while, Alan was forced to smile falsely and echo my words. "Silly, how could I ever do something to betray you?" Our display of affection caused a stir among the reporters, and the sound of camera shutters went off continuously. By the evening rush, our affectionate photo was trending, quashing rumors about H Corporation's president keeping a mistress. However, as one of the main subjects of this affectionate news, I was no longer in the villa. In fact, after playing the affectionate role, I left the villa. After all, I had to leave some space for the white flower to play her role of a pitiful victim, right? If I remember correctly, tomorrow is an important day. The white flower will make a big move, and to be safe I need some help. I sat at a booth in the bar, looking tipsy at Tony, who rushed over after my call. I powdered my eyes watery, speaking tearfully. "Tony, I'm so upset." As I spoke, I collapsed into Tony's arms, crying pitifully. However, deep down I felt nothing and even wanted to applaud my acting skills. Being able to cry on cue without getting into acting was such a waste of talent. Tony impatiently said, "Weren't you all lovey-dovey this afternoon? What's there to be upset about now?" I sobbed, crying even harder. How could he treat me this way? I liked him so much. I was so happy to marry him back then. Perhaps my grief softened Tony, and he sighed, his tone losing its impatience, now laced with a slight sneer. "And you wonder why I call you an idiot? Can't you pick a decent person?" I started crying even harder and looked up at him, pouring out all my grievances. "I'm already so upset, and you're still scolding me." If he had told me earlier that he liked Annie, even if Jenny's family was struggling, I wouldn't have clung to him. Now Annie is pregnant, and he can't get a divorce for the sake of H Group's reputation. "So what did you say?" I was crying and couldn't stop, but before I could finish my sentence, Tony interrupted me sharply. "Annie is pregnant." I shuddered as if he had scared me. Sniffling, I looked at him pitifully. "Yes, my husband told me himself that Annie is pregnant, and he wants to give Annie a status. But he knows we can't divorce, so how could he do that? Unless I die. Don't worry. As long as I am here, no one will dare to touch you." Tony looked at me and handed me a business card, speaking gently. "Keep this. If anything happens, call this number immediately." With tears in my eyes, I pitifully took the business card, not surprised at Tony's cold, emotionless smile. As I lowered my head to wipe my tears, I saw a 6-digit number on the card. Thinking about Tony's words, I guessed this was a special contact number for Tony's family. Realizing this, I held the card tighter and suddenly smiled where he couldn't see. "Tony, you said it yourself. I hope when that day comes, you won't let me down." After that day, surprisingly, Annie didn't take any action, which caught me off guard. Just when I thought Annie might be changing her plan 2 days later, while I was out for a morning run, a car suddenly appeared in front of me. Before I could react, 2 people jumped out of the car and covered my nose and mouth with a white handkerchief. A strong smell of ether filled my nostrils. I immediately held my breath but still inhaled a small amount before losing consciousness. I pressed the number Tony had left me. "Tony, I hope you didn't lie to me." I don't know how long passed before I could hear voices. They were getting clearer. It was 2 rough-sounding men. As my mind cleared, I tried to move but realized my hands and feet were bound, and a black cloth covered my eyes. I could feel my body slightly shaking, and I heard waves and seagulls. I quickly understood the kidnappers had taken me onto a boat. I stopped struggling and listened carefully to their conversation. "Boss, since she's the lady of H group, shouldn't we ransom her for more money? Are you crazy? Did you forget what Annie said? Alan wants her gone, otherwise we wouldn't have gotten her so easily." Hearing this, I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Annie, it seems my plan was correct. Annie took action after all. Now it's time for me to wake up. Hey you guys, could I say something?" My sudden voice startled the two men. "When did you wake up?" One of them, who sounded younger, asked viciously. I turned my head towards their voices since I couldn't see their faces just now. "I know you're in it for the money. I won't ask who sent you, but whatever they're giving you, I'll double it. Let me go, and I won't turn you in. Deal." From their conversation, it was clear they were greedy and wanted more. This was good. Greed I could work with to buy some time. The two kidnappers were cautious and didn't agree immediately. "You're just some cast-off wife." Hearing they were with H group confirmed my suspicions. So I calmly replied, "You're right, I am dumped by Alan, but I'm also a former heiress. My family may be down, but I have all the inheritance. I can give you more than Alan ever could. Think about it. You decide what's worth more." I deliberately confused them, making it seem like Alan himself was involved. This would help my case later when I presented it to Tony. My words seemed to work. The kidnappers focused on my offer and not my wordplay. After a moment's hesitation, they untied my hands and removed the blindfold, giving me access to the phone to transfer the money. Just as I was about to finalize the transaction, several jet skis appeared, rapidly approaching the boat, and sirens began to wail. My eyes lit up, and I pushed the kidnappers away. Crying mournfully, he hypocritically said, "I already suspected Alan was behind it. I just didn't think he'd go so far as to hurt his own wife. Don't worry, I'll find the evidence and make sure he gets what he deserves." I nodded obediently without saying a word. Everything was going according to my plan. "Tony, you finally took the bait." For my safety, Tony arranged for me to stay at his villa. Then her. Tony couldn't wait to bring Alan down, so he must have left to take care of that. Just as I expected, that very night, the news that the president of H Group had hired a hitman to kill his wife shot to the top of the trending topics. The evidence was solid, and public outcry was intense. When Tony came to see me, he couldn't hide his joy. He pulled me to watch the live broadcast. "I told you this time Alan won't get away. I'll make sure you get your revenge." I laughed and walked with him to the living room, casually glancing at his expression. The look in his eyes wasn't just about getting justice for me. It was also pure personal satisfaction. But those details were insignificant. One step at a time. Alan owed me the most. Tony can linger a little longer. We reached the living room just in time to see footage of the H Group building on TV. Tony hurriedly pulled me to sit down. "Quick. Alan's about to be arrested by the police any minute now." But before he could finish, he stopped abruptly and muttered in disbelief, "What's going on?" I was also surprised, staring at the TV. The footage showed not police arresting Alan, but a press conference. At the conference, Alan claimed he had no relationship with Annie and that everything was her doing. He even said that she had orchestrated my kidnapping. Alan then presented irrefutable evidence pointing to Annie as the mastermind behind the kidnapping, and said that he had already turned the evidence over to the police. He added that he had only made a mistake any man could make and sincerely apologized to me, hoping for my forgiveness. What? How dare he do this to Annie? That bastard. Tony suddenly stood up, looking at the TV with a dark expression, fists clenched tightly. As Alan finished speaking, Tony couldn't hold back and kicked the table in front of him, teeth clenched. "Bullshit. The evidence I found, he used it to frame Annie. Alan, I won't let you get away with that." Tony stormed upstairs, furious. Watching Tony's angry back, I chuckled softly to myself and turned back to the TV, looking at Alan. Before all this, Annie was his first love. Now he's pretending he had nothing to do with her. Even Tony, as vile as he is, couldn't stand Alan's hypocrisy and selfishness. Alan truly is a piece of work, always finding new ways to surprise me with his deceit. I couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for Annie, sacrificing her self-respect for a man like Alan. But sympathy doesn't mean I'll let her off the hook. Considering Tony's angry reaction, I knew Alan was in for some serious payback from him. And that's just what I wanted to see. Time to move on to the next step of my plan. I got out of the taxi and looked at Alan's villa with a surprisingly relaxed mood. Today, I came to see Alan. I heard this morning that Annie had been sent to jail without a chance to defend herself. The stress in seeing Alan's press conference made her faint, and she lost the baby. Such unfortunate news. Alan's long-awaited child was gone. He needed to be informed immediately, so he could mourn properly. The recent blows had left Alan looking very worn out. When he saw me walk in, he hoarsely demanded, "What are you here for?" I ignored his attitude, sat down on the couch and calmly said, "I'm here to tell you that Annie had a miscarriage." "What?" Alan stood up, his face contorted with shock and anger. "You're lying. How dare you curse my child?" Despite his press conference damage control, H Group stock was still plummeting, hitting an all-time low. Alan was now a public pariah. I looked at him mockingly. "Stop pretending. Do you really think you're still the president of H Group? Give it a rest. And don't be so sure that the baby was even yours." Alan glared at me, teeth gritted. "What do you mean by that?" I shrugged. "I'm just saying Annie and Tony seemed pretty close. How else would you explain her arrest being followed by Tony's immediate retaliation?" I spread my hands, raising an eyebrow. "Do you think I'm that charming? If so, he should have crashed my wedding to steal me from you." As expected, my words made Alan's face darken, his eyes growing cold. He stared at me for a moment before saying, "Why are you telling me this? Aren't you afraid I'll go after Tony next?" Meeting his gaze, I remained fearless. "Why should I be afraid? Tony's only helping me because of Annie. You're both obsessed with her. I'd love to see their dirty laundry aired out." I smirked and looked at him. "So I'm really looking forward to seeing if you, who got cheated on so badly, are a real man." I didn't need to say much, just planting seeds of doubt was enough. With that, I ignored Alan and walked out of the villa. In a nearby hotel room, I sat on the couch watching a surveillance feed on my laptop. It had sound too. Not long after I left, Tony rushed into Alan's villa. I watched as he stormed into the living room and punched Alan hard. "You dare harm Annie? I'll kill you." Clearly, Tony already knew Annie had a miscarriage. Tony's words only confirmed my psychological suggestion. Alan, furious with Tony, roared and got up to land a punch in return. Soon, the two were fighting fiercely in the living room. Watching the scene, I calmly picked up my phone and called the cops. Alan, being trained, quickly gained the upper hand. Tony, eyes red with rage, yelled, "Alan!" He grabbed a glass ashtray from the coffee table and smashed it over Alan's head. Police cars arrived with sirens blaring. The cops rushed into the villa, quickly subdued Tony, and took him away. An ambulance took Alan to the hospital. Soon, the crowd dispersed, leaving only a few police officers investigating the scene. Watching everything from the surveillance, I smiled, saved the video, and left the hotel room with my laptop. It wasn't until I walked out of the hotel that I truly breathed a sigh of relief and smiled genuinely. In my past life, these two men caused my tragic death over Annie. Today, it's still because of this woman, so they must reap what they sow. I said I'd make them pay, and I won't let any of the epilogue. 3 months later, I sat in the visiting room of a women's prison. Across from me was a haggard-looking Annie. She glared at me, her face twisted in rage, and lunged at me. "You bitch. It was all your plan. Give me back my child." The guard behind her yelled at her to calm down, but I just smiled at her. "Speaking of the child, do you know?" Leaning closer, I whispered, "I don't even know whose child it was." I felt guilty all on my own, watching her face contort further in anger and her struggle against the guard. I stood up, left her screams behind, and walked out of the prison. Next, I went to the detention center to see the second person I wanted to meet. Seeing the familiar face, I shook my head. Tony was calmer than Annie. Despite his dark expression, he looked at me and asked, though it was more of a statement, "It was all your design?" I couldn't help but laugh. You're truly Annie's backup. Even your words are the same. Speaking of Annie, you must still be heartbroken over that child, right? Tony's expression finally changed at my words. He glared at me. What do you mean? I smiled. You know what I mean. Regretting it now, are you? Seeing Tony's expression change so drastically made me laugh even more. I stood up and told him, your family has fallen because of you. From now on, you'll regret your sins and hear this. This is the punishment you deserve for being an accomplice. Finally, I went to the hospital, put on sterile clothes, and entered the ICU. The heart monitor was still beeping, showing the man lying on the bed. Once so arrogant just 3 months ago, I looked at him, all my past love and hate turning into satisfaction from revenge. I found a chair, sat down, and started talking. Alan, you're even dumber than Tony. Hearing my words, Alan's hand twitched. I chuckled silently and continued. I visited Annie today. Tony knew the child wasn't his. But did you know even Annie doesn't know whose child it was? The man on the bed began to convulse slightly. I stood up, still smiling, and told him, oh, and by the way, you have no family. We're still married, and I'm in charge of your company now. Leaning close to his ear, I whispered something. The heart monitor let out a piercing beep. Medical staff rushed in to resuscitate him, and I slipped out of the room. A week later, I held a simple funeral for Alan. Then I left the city with the money from selling off the H Group company. Alan, ever wonder why I hate you so much? Do you believe in rebirth and revenge?